Welcome to today's show, and thank you for joining us. As always, these shows are about you and your suggestions, ideas, and feedback, so keep coming to CourtneyAnderson.com and letting me know what's on your mind, what you'd like to see in future shows, what ideas you have, because we can always improve, and it's all about providing solutions that are pragmatic and useful to the challenges in your life and your professional career. So today we're going to talk about something that, I think is appropriate. A lot of people contact me, or I'm out and I'm talking or giving a keynote, and people come up to me and tell me, sometimes the most just heartbreaking things. And I know that I'm often about action. I'm often giving advice, and it's about how we're going to think through this and how we're going to have a problem solution that's going to work, and that there's a path and there's a way for us to influence situations and put leverage into an organizational challenge. But the topic today is what do you do when the thread that you were hanging by breaks? What do you do when life sometimes can just overwhelm us? And if we were already in a somewhat precarious position, if we were feeling like we were just hanging by a thread, and that thread snaps, it breaks, what do we do? So we're gonna spend some time in this episode sort of exploring that. And again, as always, I'm gonna try to be, I always do, to be as pragmatic and realistic as I can. If there's a magic way or an easy way, I just don't know about it to deal with a lot of these things. I often advise that things are not easy, ever. So when we look at this reality and some of our options, I want you to keep in mind that it's always about, we try to be pragmatic because then we have good information about making choices, because then we have a realistic understanding of the situation, and we're able to deal with what is and not what we wish could be or would be or should be. So let's chat for a little bit about this and see what opportunities that there are when life throws us those unexpected, because they're always unexpected, situations where we just weren't prepared. The first part of this is we always want to look at what we can do and what we can't do. And in so much of what we work on, we look at what the law says, what we can and can't do, and what when we're looking at work, what the business ethics and management technique tells us we should and shouldn't do. This is really more about that third part of why we do what we do. Why do we do what we do? And we're going along in life, and all of a sudden, and it usually seems like a tsunami. We're going along, we're doing our routine, we're going to sleep, we're getting up, we're taking a shower, we're brushing our teeth, we're getting ready for work, we're heading on out there, we're doing our best, we're stopping by the grocery store, we're getting our groceries, we're sort of just doing our daily routine. We're just sort of, getting through each day. And in most of our days, nothing really exciting happens. I mean, really, most of our days are kind of the same, which is good. I mean, if we have a place to live, a roof over our head, the ability to be able to afford food and utilities, we're in a good place. We're very fortunate. But just sometimes in life, it just comes along, and I honestly don't know a better way to say it. It just sort of kicks you in the butt. It really does. And it all, that saying, when it rains, it pours, it always seems like one thing will happen and you think, oh, okay, I can handle it. I can absorb this. I can grasp onto something. And then it just sort of piles up, and then you're kind of down to that last thread you were hanging by, and you were thinking, all right, I'm still here. I'm in it. I can, just get through this, and then boom, that snaps. That breaks. What do we do? So I think the first part of this is, one, we want to be honest with ourselves, and it's so hard. We spend a lot of time, and I know I do in my practice of listening to people, and it's very easy for people to pinpoint when somebody else is the problem, right? So sometimes I go to talk to someone and they're telling me about what a horrible manager they have at work, and the manager is the cause of all their problems. The manager's an idiot. I mean, this manager, my gosh, if they got rid of that manager, life would turn around. Or I'll talk to a manager and that manager's giving me a whole story about how horrible their people are. I had one manager tell me, she said, my team, she said, they are dumber than my dog. And she didn't just tell me this, she went and told them that, And I meet a lot of people who can pinpoint the problem. As an attorney over the years, I've had a lot of people, they can tell me, it's that ex-wife, it's that ex-husband, it's that relative that's causing all these problems. And, they can put a lot of energy into it and sound, really convinced it's all about that other person. But whenever we have a situation in life, we're wondering about why someone's doing something, someone else is doing it, we always have to remember there's two parts to why somebody does something. One, because they want to. And two, because they're allowed to. So a few years ago, I was practicing law full time, and I had a criminal case. And I had a lot of these types of criminal cases. One of the most common types of criminal cases, criminal assault cases, are domestic violence. We call it domestic violence. And that's where someone in the same household, it might be husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, it might be parent, child, engages in violence against each other. So this is extremely common. And I've had almost every variation. I had adult female who physically attacked the elderly mother-in-law. I've had elderly parents physically attack adult children. Of course, the whole rampant area of child abuse where adults attack minor children. And I had one where two adults, and I think they were engaged. And so they had some sort of altercation in the pickup truck, and the gentleman said, he was telling me later, and he's telling me, he says, we're driving down the road, and, she starts, nagging me and, throwing all this stuff in my face, just bringing up stuff. And I think what he was trying to say is that for a lot of people, when we sort of reach back in the past, and this happens, and people do it all the time, you kind of reach back in the past and you remember something that happened, maybe you're still mad about that, and you want to bring it up now, right? And you want to say, remember that time? And you want to go do a whole thing about it. And so he had a somewhat of a valid point. He's, she's bringing this up, and he says to me, he says, and I told her, I said, just let it go. Just let it go. And apparently she wouldn't let it go. And so accidentally, he didn't remember what happened, but some sort of accident happened where she was shoved out of this pickup truck while they were driving down the freeway. So I'm at the jail trying to secure his release, as that was my job at that time. And lo and behold, someone shows up. And she's fresh from the hospital. And she's bandaged. And it's the beloved of this gentleman, the victim who'd been thrown out of the pickup truck. And she was there to help bring money, to help get him out of jail to me and the bail bondsman. And she was crying. And, one of the things that I think is helpful for us, for me it always is, if someone's crying and they're, and making sounds like they're in distress and they're in pain, I usually believe that. I usually believe, okay, well, it must hurt, right? And so she's there and she's crying and she's saying things like, I should have just shut up. I should have just let it go. And, he just told me, I just keep running my mouth and it's all my fault. And the amazing thing of this is that the gentleman was very angry at her, because he said she pushed his buttons. That's what he said to me. He said she pushed my buttons. She did it on purpose. She knew that this would make me upset, and then she says it and she does it, and then this thing happened accidentally, her shoved out of the truck, and, now this is all her fault. And the amazing thing about this, when we started this show, and I said we have to be realistic with ourselves about being pragmatic, because you can't fix a problem if you don't own up to what the cause is, right? If I don't know what's broken, I can't fix it. So this gentleman believed his problem was his beloved, who runs her mouth and pushes his buttons. And the interesting thing is, I've heard a lot of people over the years tell me that. I've heard adults tell me that children, my little children, were pushing their buttons by saying and doing things. And then, you know, who knows, whatever accident happened. And, but it's the person who's pushing the button, it's their fault. That's what I've heard. I've heard this in almost every variation. And I think we should take a moment to reflect that if someone else is pushing our button, okay, well, we have to, again, right? I have the same foundational answer for everything. When you ask me why somebody does something, I'm always going to say because they want to and because they're allowed to. So if somebody wants to push your buttons, you can't stop that. If somebody is allowed to continue to push your buttons, though, you do have a role in that. You can stop the process of them pushing the button. Now, you can't stop it by shoving them out of a pickup truck, right? Or accidentally throwing them down some stairs. Totally happens. How about you stop the process by removing yourself? If somebody is saying something or doing something, and you believe that's going to lead to you having some sort of violent eruption, the law is going to hold you responsible for the violent eruption part. They are. Even if you have a very valid long story explaining what led up to the violent eruption. Because again, what we can and can't do, that basic rule, the law says we're not allowed to assault other people. That's just the law. So it's not a defense to that to say, well, they made me do it, right? Because they wouldn't shut up. Or they made me do it because they were crying, or they made, and that's what I hear a lot of the with minor children, especially babies, is that they just keep crying. Well, yeah, they're babies. I mean, since we're legally held responsible for our actions, I think it's important that we look at this, what I and many other people call the victim mentality. The gentleman who was briefly incarcerated for the accident of the girlfriend outside the truck, he believed he was a victim of her pushing his buttons. I have seen variations of this where people explain to me, and people believe this. People believe that they're going through their lives, and then this thread that we talked about earlier, it snaps. But they believe it's not their responsibility. They believe that they're a victim of what somebody else said or did to make that happen. Right? So this gentleman, he had his own little business, and he was explaining that, you know, because of being arrested, he's going to miss work, and it's going to create problems with, you know, his business, and, you know, and he's blaming all this at the feet of the woman who wouldn't shut up when he told her to, right? Because he did tell her, you know, and she admitted, he did tell me, shut up. And he's saying in his mind, I'm a victim. I'm a victim of this. This happened to me. I'm the victim. Now, legally, we know that he's not the victim, she's the victim, because she's the victim of the assault. So when we start to look at our lives, when things go just out of beyond our worst imagination of what could happen, and we start to ask, my goodness, what can I do? How did this happen? I do think it's important that we ask ourselves, did we contribute to this? Now, I know it's very prevalent, and I know it's very easy for us to play the victim. And we do it in really horrible ways when it comes to things like assault. We do it in little ways. We do it in little ways. You know, I know that I do a lot with fitness and health, right? And people say, well, my goodness, I just woke up one day and I was, 100 pounds overweight. Okay, well, that's totally true. You do wake up one day and you can be 100 pounds overweight, totally. Now, did that happen between yesterday and today? Were you a victim where you were just going along, doing everything normally, and then boom, extra 100 pounds on you? No. Now, are there medical conditions that can result in some sort of unusual weight gain as a byproduct of some sort of medical condition or a medical prescription? Yes, and I'm not talking about that. What I'm saying is that there's a role that we play in something either as innocuous, although it can be serious for our health, as not watching what we're eating. And it's the same mindset. I know, and a lot of you have been with me over the last several years, and as I said, life sometimes hanging by the thread and it snaps. And that has certainly happened to me. And sometimes life just kicks you in the butt. You know, you don't think it's going to happen, and it happens. And I have had a lot, and I went through a period where I absolutely positively, one of the few things that I did that I felt I had some control over that made me feel better for just a little bit were some wonderful things like pecan pie and donuts and any type of like bread, like cinnamon bread or raisin bread or buttered bread. I took refuge in food, and I remember going and putting on clothes, and I remember pulling them up and thinking, my goodness, my dryer must really be acting up. It must have shrunk all these clothes. I just can't believe it. That's the weirdest thing. I should buy a new dryer. Because clearly that must be the problem, right? Not the fact that I'm not taking care of myself and I was eating emotionally. I ate too much. I certainly didn't exercise. That's why I gained weight. Now, I'm a big believer in being pragmatic. That formula works in reverse. If you eat less and or exercise, you will lose weight. Now, there's a trillion different plans out there to help people do it. And some people tell you it's the color of the food you eat, and some people tell you it's your blood type, and some people tell you it's the time of day you eat. I mean, there's all kinds of versions of this. The bottom line is you have to eat less than your body burns, and then you'll lose weight. That's brutal, and that's hard to take responsibility for. But the issues that have happened beyond that cause some of these things are just, when we look at our lives, we have to be honest with ourselves and ask that question, am I part of this? Did I have a role in what happened? So if I find myself incarcerated for assault, I can be upset and say that somebody else pushed my buttons, but I strongly suggest that I stop and ask myself, am I doing a victim mentality here? Because a victim mentality is where somebody rationalizes, and a rationalization is a lie we tell ourselves. And these are the best kinds of lies. Because lies other people tell us, we can't control them. Who knows when somebody will tell you a lie? But a rationalization is a lie you can tell yourself, and you can tell yourself any time that you want, unlimited. So when I told myself, when I couldn't get my jeans on, that my dryer shrunk them, that's a rationalization. That's a lie I told myself. My dryer didn't shrink my jeans. I ate too much. That gives me power to try to solve that, because the solution is mathematical. You look and find out how many calories your body burns, right? Based on your size, your height, your gender. There's all kind of calculators, and that'll give you a number. And then if you eat less than that calorie, you'll lose weight. So have I oversimplified it? Yes. But that's something that I could act on instead of me sitting there and saying I'm a victim of my dryer. I could say no, and it gave me some power and some control over the situation. Now, for all the other things that happen in life that we really aren't part of it, for people who have lost loved ones, for people who struggle with people who have addiction, for people who've gone through extreme grief, for those other people out there who are survivors of a suicide in your family like I am, there are some things that are just beyond our control. And when those things happen, and that thread, it does snap, and the power of that, when some of these things happen, one, you have to go and you have to seek help. The amazing thing, in any community, no matter where you are, there are other people who've either been through what you've been through, or there are professionals who can help you. If you're somewhere isolated and you can't get to a professional or you can't get to a group, there are online support groups. I will say that I was not a big proponent necessarily of this, but I got a lot out of going and being around other people who've been through similar things, that sometimes you're going along in life and you're going along and then life just kicks you in the butt. And when you do that first process where you ask yourself, am I part of this? When it comes to things that are disease, murders and really just things that are just so beyond your control, in that situation, you really aren't. And at that point, you have to go into preservation mode. And when you go into preservation mode, everybody's different. You know, I know one of the things that is very difficult is when people come to you and they say to you, I know how you feel. I've been through some of the things I've been through, and I had someone say to me, well, I know how you feel. You know, my dog passed away. And I just thought, wow, that's painful on so many levels. Like, you equate this to that, but okay. You know, but people don't really know how to respond. You know, the majority of people are very fortunate where they go through their lives and they don't have really catastrophic and really awful things happen. And thank goodness, right? And so when they're kind of around someone who does, they honestly just don't know what to say or what to do. And most people who are in that moment of when these things happen that are just awful, honestly, you don't even have the energy. I mean, really, you know, who cares? You know, the self-preservation and the thing that I'm asking in this episode is that no matter who you are, and no matter how unbelievably horrible something is, there's other people like you who have really, really been through that, and there's kind and giving people in every one of these communities who've set up support groups and are going to do everything they can to help. But you got to reach out. You got to let people know. And if you're in a really dark place in your life and you just are feeling like you're about to give up, please reach out. Please, please reach out. I am literally begging you. If I could get on this ground and on my knees and get back up, I would. There is always somebody out there who's rooting for you, but you got to let them know you need help. So our topic today is, what do you do when you're hanging in there by a thread and it snaps? Reach out. Thank you for joining us.